How are you doing? And I hope everybody is doing great. I hope you are great. I hope you are doing fine. In this video, I'm going to show you the basic introductions to Python. How to get started with Python. Firstly, you already know how to install Python installer on your PC, and you already know how to install Visual Studio Code, which is our text editor. But I'm going to quickly show you how to do all those stuffs. If you want to run Python on your code, you need to get Python installer installed on your PC. The very first thing you need to do is to go to www.python.org. If you go to www.python.org, you will see where you are going to download your Python. This is Python installer. Then you click on it to download it. After you download your Python, the next thing to do is to install Python on your PC. After you are done, I already have Python installed on my own PC. If I type Python, you will see that I already have Python installer on my PC. You can also do the same by clicking on download Python. And in case you don't get how to install Python very well, I would recommend you follow a tutorial on how to install Python on your PC. And the next thing to do after you install your Python is to install your text editor, the editor that you are going to use to write your Python code. In my own case, I use Visual Studio Code. If you want to install Visual Studio Code, just type Visual Studio Code. Search for Visual Studio Code and you will see where to download Visual Studio Code. Either you are using Mac OS, you are using Linux, or you are using Windows. You can click on any one that you like and download the Visual Studio Code. After you download the Visual Studio Code, then install it on your system and launch it. Let me quickly show you my own Visual Studio Code. This is my Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to launch it. These are the two basic things that you need to install in order to get started with Python. So this is my Visual Studio Code. In my Visual Studio Code, wait, let me quickly delete this so that we can start everything from fresh. In my Visual Studio Code, this is my folder. I'm already in a specific folder. And if you want to open another folder, you can click on File, then go to Open Folder. If you click on Open Folder, then you can navigate to any folder that you want to open. In my own case, I already have a folder that I want to open here. And this is the folder that I want to open. In this folder, there is no file in it. And I'm going to click on this plus button to create a new file. Or you can just come here and press this or press Ctrl N to create a new file. So click on this and create a new file. I'm going to type main.py as my file. This is the file. If you notice something about the file that I just created, you will see that it ends with .py. When we are talking about what the prefix that end this main, it is referred to as file extension. File extension is a prefix that end a document and it is describing hopefully that is just the major work of file extension. File extension is just there to tell our computer the type of file we are working on, the type of file we are trying to access, the type of file we are working with. In the case of audio, video, and other things, if you notice in your audio you have .mp3. This is a file extension that is telling the CPU that this document is .mp3 is an audio file. If it is .mkv, it is telling the computer that, oh, this is what? A video. If it is .mp3, mp4, it is also telling you that this is what? .mp4. This is a file extension of a video also, but the format is different from .mkv and .mp4. In the case of Python, the file extension that we used to identify Python is what we refer to as what? .py. .py. So normally the name of our Python file that we just create right now is main. But the file extension that our compiler is going to use to understand that this is Python file is what we refer to as what? .py. I hope you understand that. So after we have successfully created our file and we already know what a file extension is and the reason why we add .py to it, the next thing is to move on to data type. When we are talking about data type is the type of data type is an is like a wait, data type is just a thing that we use to identify the type of data that we are working on, that we want to collect from our users. You know, when we are in mathematics, we can say x equals to 10. If you say x equals to 10, then you can say name equals to Holland. In this case, x is a number, while name is what? Is a letter. This is what we refer to as data type. Data type is going to tell you the type of value that you want to accept, that you want to assign to a variable when we are talking about data type. In this case, in Python, we have different data type. We have a int, we have string, there is list, these are the four basic data type. Okay, we have floats. Sorry, there is float also, and we have some boolean. These are the data types that we have in Python. These data types are going to tell the Python compiler the type of file, the type of values that you want to collect, that you want to assign to a specific variable. You will notice that I've been talking about variable, but we have not gone in depth to what a variable is. Yes, that is correct. I'm going to tell you what a variable is real quick, then we'll move back to data type and how to use data type. When we are talking about variable, a variable is a storage location that is used to save a value temporarily. When we are talking about the variable, let me give you an instance. If you have a bucket, inside the bucket, you can use your bucket to hold some food stuff. You can go to market and buy some fruits and put everything inside your bucket. It is going to help you to hold it. At some point, you can offload all the fruit from the basket, from the bucket, and it's going to remain just ordinary empty bucket. You can use the bucket to fetch water. You can pour water inside the bucket. It is going to hold it, but whatever you put inside the bucket is not going to be permanent. You can remove them and replace them. That is the main work of a variable. When we are talking about variable, you can call it a storage location or a container. So anything you hide inside a variable, anything you assign to a variable is not going to be there permanently. It means that it can change with time. You can be able to change it. But before you can change what is inside a variable, you have to discard the first one. The first one you have to be discard before you can be able to add another one. If you remember the case of bucket that has fruit inside it, you have to remove the fruit before you can pour water or any other thing inside it. So how to declare a variable in Python? We have rules. This is the syntax of declaring a variable in Python. The very first thing to do is your variable name. When you want to declare a variable in Python, you first write your variable name. A variable must have a name. You have to create a name for your variable. Then, followed by what? Followed by an assignment operator. Then, followed by the value that you want to assign to your variable. This is the syntax. This is the rules that guide how to create a variable. And we now want to create a variable. For instance, I can say a equals to 10. In this case, I want my a to help me to hold this 10. A is my variable name and equals to is the assignment operator that I used to assign value to a. That a, please help me to hold this value. And what is the value that our a is trying to hold? It's trying to hold 10. So the value that I want to hold, that I want this a to keep for me, is 10. And this is our value. And in this case, since the value that we are trying to hold is 10, is a number, then we classify it to as integer. Anytime we are dealing with numbers, we use integer in Python. Integers deals with number. Anytime you want to accept number, while string deals with anytime we have also, sorry, I remember something. We have character here also. Forget to write it. So we have a variable name followed by the assignment operator and the value that we are trying to assign to our variable name. But anytime we want to create a variable name, there are some rules that guide variable naming. I can boldly say a equals to 10. I can say Holland equals to 10. It is going to, our compiler is going to accept it because according to its rules, this makes sense. But believe me, I cannot say 1 equals to 10 because a variable name can never restart with a number. It is not possible. I cannot start a variable name with a number. So what if I just say, oh, let me say first variable. You will see that it accepts it. That means that a variable name must not be space embedded. We can use underscore to join two words together whenever we are naming a variable. And you can also use camel case, in which the first letter of each word is going to be capitalized. This is the first variable. Is part of a good way of naming a variable. If you notice this, Everything looks perfect and no one is disturbing another, and it is not giving us an error because the naming convention is quite awesome. And if you don't want to use that, you can use underscore to join them together. And you can't let's try in case of starting our this with this. If you see that it's not going to accept it because a variable name cannot start with a special characters. So we can only use string to create our variable name, and our variable name must not be space embedded. I, I can create it like this also, is going to accept it. So that is the rules that guide the variable name anytime you want to create a variable. So let me just say first, this is our first variable that we are declaring in our Python code, and this variable is helping us to hold an integer. So let's try and create another variable. Let me say second variable. This second variable, I now told my second variable to hold sprite star. This second variable is holding something different from this, if you notice. What this one is holding is a number, and what this one is holding is a string. We call it string in Python. This is an int, while this is a string. The next thing is we call char. This is character. When I want to accept string, there are string used to accept letters, word, or a sentence. But in case of character, character is just going to accept just only one alphabet. Just only one alphabet. It cannot accept multiple alphabets like string. String can be used to accept letters, while char can be used to accept just only a single character. In this case, I can accept C, and this is an example of a character. The next thing is list. When we are talking about list, we are talking about collections of items. If you want to collect number of items, you can use list to collect number of items. I can just say I want to accept one from 1 to 10. I can use my list to collect 1 to 10 to list them. You will notice that list is somehow different from just an int variable or a string variable. In case of an int variable, it can only have just only one value. But in case of list can have multiple value of any data type. In this case, this is what we got to as our what? As list in Python. And we have tuple. Tuple is like another versions of a list, but while list is immutable, tuple is mutable. Anytime you had anything that you had inside your tuple cannot be changed over time. No one can be able to change anything that is inside your tuple. So in this case, anytime you want to create a tuple, you are going to use brace. It is little different from our list. And last, okay, we have dictionary. Whenever we are talking about dictionary, six variable, then we have this. Dictionary works with pairs. we have keys and its corresponding values. In case of list, you can only use list to accept a number of items, but in case of dictionary, you can surely use it to accept a number of items, but if you want to accept that number of items, then dictionary comes in keys and pairs. You have to tell us the key, the type of item that you want to. Okay, I want to accept the first name of Sprite Star. Then you have to tell us that this is the first name and his name is what? Sprite Star. This is the key and the value, the key that you want to accept and its corresponding value. Like for instance, I want to accept the first name of someone, someone personal information. Then this first name is my key, telling me that what I want to accept from that person is what? Is first name. Then I'm going to accept that first name in my dictionary as Sprite Star. This is how dictionary works. It works with the key and its corresponding values. So it is used to accept informations of you can use it to accept any information, full information. It is somehow different from list. So we call it dictionary, dict in Python. And we have boolean. Anytime we are talking about boolean, we are talking about true or false, 0 and 1. So anytime you want to deal with something that just you want to use to make a decision, either it is true or it is false, you can use boolean. So let me just say last variable. In our last variable, you can say it is true, and you can change it. You can say it is false. So this is just a boolean telling my code that okay, initial value of this variable is what? Is false. You can put it to okay. This is boolean. This is how boolean is used. We can always if you now want to check how their data type looks, what is really inside there. I already told you that this is an integer, this is a string, and this is a character. But let's use our Python code to check if it is true, if that is really true about all these variables that we just create. If you want to create a variable, you have to print it after you are done. This print functions is used to print our result. Anything that you do in Python and you want to print the result, you want to have an output, we use print to provide an output. So if I say print first variable, it is going to print this 10, the value that was assigned to this. So in that case, to run your code, you go to terminal, click on new terminal. After you click on it, then click on dir to check if your file is already in the folder that you are in. So if you see my main.py is already in the folder, in your own case, if it is not in that folder, you have to navigate to that folder using cd and the actual part of the folder that you want to move to. So I'm going to quickly run my code by invoking Python compiler, which is Python, then followed by the name of file that I want to run. Click on enter and it displays the value of what to me? The value of my first variable. So my first variable is this, and this is its value. So if I want to know its data type also, let's come down here and let's check the type of our first variable. Let's come back to our code and run the code. You see that it says my first variable is an integer. So it means that this is an integer. Anything that deals with numbers is an integer. I forget to declare one variable. We have a seventh variable, which is float. Anytime you want to deal with anything that is decimal that has decimal point, we regard to it as float. It is called float in Python. So in this case, if I want to check for all of them to check their data type and see if the answer that is going to print to us is going to be equivalent to all these, so that we can get a clear picture, you are going to use type to know the type of variable that you declare. Either it is a string, an integer, a character, or a list. So let me quickly put everything together. We have a second variable, third variable, fourth variable, and this is my last variable. So we want to know the type of each one of them. So I'm going to print the results, and I'm going to correspond the results with this. So the first one is an integer, the second one is a string, the next one is a string, the next one is a list, the next one is a tuple, the next one is a dictionary, float, and boolean. So let's go back to our code and check everything. So it says the first variable is an integer, which is correct. The next one is a string, and it's regard to our character as what, also as a string. Yes, that is normal. In case of Python, Python use string instead of declaring character and string differently. But in case of other programming language, character is different and string is different. But in case of Python, it's collide everything together. Like in case of integer, also in other programming language we have int, we have long. But in case of Python, we only have int. In case of float, also we have float in Python. But in case of other programming language, we have float, we have double. So if you see, these are all the types of the variables that we declare in our code. These are all their types. We have the list, we have the tuple, we have the dict and float, then boolean. I hope you understand how to declare a variable in Python now. So I'm going to comment this out, and we are going to start by declaring our variable to do something good. Since we already know how to declare a variable, the next thing to do is to declare a variable and work with that variable. So I've commented everything out, then we can start a new program. So in this case, the next thing we are going to do is to write a code that is going to do an arithmetic, a simple arithmetic operator that's going to add two numbers together. Then I can say my A is equals to 10 and B equals to 20. In this case, A is an integer and b also is an integer, and I want to add them together according to mathematical rule. If I want to add them together, I'm going to use plus sign to add them together. I can just say results equals to a plus b. Then I'll print my results. Let's go back and print this. And that is just it. Our result is 30, which shows that it helps us to add 10 and 20s together and save the result inside this variable. This variable is the one that is going to accept the result of this and what and this. So that is just a simple arithmetic in Python. We have something we call operators in Python, and we have arithmetic operators. These arithmetic operators comprises of all the mathematical operators also, like BODMAS. In mathematics, it is referred to as but in programming, it is called BEDMAS because we have a lot of more functions in programming than in BODMAS. In programming, the B stands for bracket. We have the exponential, we have divisions, we have multiplication, we have modulus, we have integer division, and we have multiplication, addition, and subtraction. So anytime you want to do any mathematical operator in Python, then you make use of BEDMAS. It deals with arithmetic operators like plus, we have minus, we have division, we have multiplication, we have brackets, and there is exponential. The exponential can be represented by this in programming. We have exponential, and we have integer division. These are all the arithmetic operators that we have in Python. We use them to perform a certain mathematical operators. If you want to have something together, you make use of arithmetic operators. If you want to divide something, you want to remove something, or you want to do anything, you make use of arithmetic operator. So in that case, let's quickly try something out. Let's write a program. And formula to find the area of a circle is pi r square. R square. This is the formula for finding the area of a circle, in which pi is a constant, is 22/7, which is equal to 3.142. So we are going to declare our variable. In this case, we have two variables that is going to accept value, and we are going to save the two variables, their result inside a new variable. Let's declare our pi to be equals to its constant value, which is 3.142. In this case, pi is a float, it's not an integer, and the r that was given to us, the radius that was given to us to perform this operation, is equals to 5. Then say r equals to 5. So the next thing to do is to create a new variable, which is result, that is going to hold the area of a circle. Then area of a circle is equals to pi asterisk r. You can also say asterisk r, which means that it will be equals to 5 times 5. And you can say asterisk asterisk 2. It is still the same thing. So in this case, I'm going to use pi asterisk r asterisk 2. So let's print area of a circle. So if you run your Python code, the area of a circle of this is 78.55. Then we can now add centimeter to it. Anytime you want to add a string to your result, you write it, you use comma to separate a string from an actual variable. Are you with me? So first say this is 75.55 centimeter. You will see that there is a space in between them. If you don't want it to have a space, then you will use plus sign so that it will concatenate everything together, and you see that it is not accepting it from us. So it's better we use this, or we use print format, but I don't want to go to print format right now. We will come back to print format later. So after that, I hope you already understand the basic of how to use Python and how to run Python. The next thing that we do right now is to write a code to find the simple interest. We already know that the formula to calculate simple interest is principal times rate times time, everything divided by 100. So the very first thing we are going to do is follow our algorithm and first write out the formula. After you write out the formula, then you know how to carry out the code, how to write the code specifically. First thing, let's write the formula. The formula is principal everything over 100. This is the formula to calculate simple interest. So since we already know the formula, it's quite easy to manipulate it. The only thing we are going to do is just to create a variable and assign all these given input to our variable, and we are going to save all the result of everything that is here inside a new variable called simple interest. So our principal simple interest and the simple interest is what? 100. So if you want to show your simple interest, you can just add a string in front of this. So in case I change this to this, as you can see that my value changes along the way. As I'm changing the given variable, my values keep changing also. So I'm going to change my value back to normal thing. So we are going to, okay, sorry. So that is that about a variable. Anytime you are dealing with how to or dealing with mathematical aspects of programming, you can always make use of arithmetic operator to solve this. I'm going to give you an assignment on integer before I move on to the next thing. So the assignment is, so you can try and check this out. Try to write a Python functions to solve for quadratic equations. Then let's move on to Python. We have been working with Python with given number, but what if our user is the one that is going to enter the number for us? We want to accept input from our user. We want to accept value from our user. We don't want to be the one to give the code the value that we want before we start writing the code. We want our user to be the one to input the code. Then let's try something out about inputs. So in this case, let's write a program. So in this case, we are meant to accept two different inputs from our user, and we want to find the average of those two inputs. So we are not the one that's going to give it a specific value. We just want our user to type in a value that he wants by itself. So in this case, we use, let's say our first number will be equals to, then you call this input. In Python, we have a function called input that is used to accept input from our user. So input, enter first number. Then you will use caret return to make your code go to next line after it prints this. So we have a second number which is equals to input enter second number, then this. But the code is not going to run, it's going to throw an error because input literally is a string. It is in a string format and it is not in an integer format. If we want to accept int, we have to typecast it. We have to convert this string to an integer. If I run this code, it is going to give me an error telling me that invalid literal because I want to enter a number to a string, which is not possible. So let me run it and show you. Let me say print. It's going to throw an error, but I really want you to see the error. Let me type 2 and then type 4. Okay, it doesn't display anything. Okay, now let me say plus second number. Let me try to perform an operator, an arithmetic operator. You see that it joins them together instead of what? Instead of adding them together, because it sees them as a string because they are not a number. Okay, in this case, let me just say this first number plus 1. Let's add 1 to it and see if it is going to work. So it is telling me that type error because the type is different. The first name is string and the number that I want to add to it is a string because it is an integer because it is a number. So which means that anything that I accept using this input is going to be string automatically. So the next thing that I'm going to do is to convert this to an integer so that it will make sense, so that I'll be able to use those numbers. It's not going to accept them as a string. String can accept anything that you type on it, but you won't be able to perform any mathematical operations with string. It is not going to work. So in this case, let me quickly show you how the next thing to do to convert our string, our number that is in string format to a or to an integer. What we are going to do is what we refer to as typecasting. It is used to change from one data type to another. If you want to change a string to a number, then you typecast. If you want to change a number to a string, then you typecast it. So I'm going to say my first number is equals to the integer of what? This first number that is here. You know, this first number is a new variable that I'm created. So I will just say is equals to int first number. So add let me change the name. Let me just say first value so that everything can be clear to you guys. So I've converted this to an integer. You see that this one is a string, but this one is an integer. So it will help me to convert the value that is inside this to an integer. Then I will do this. My second value is also equals to int second number also. It's going to typecast this and change it to an integer. Then I can now do everything that I want with this since they are what? They are integer. Let me quickly say, let's now calculate the average. So average is going to be first value divided by first value plus second value divided by 2. So I'm going to add the both of them together and divide this by 2 to find their average. Let's print out the average and see how our program is. So the first value is 10 and the second one is 6. And the average of both of them is 7. Is that really true? If we say 4 plus 6 is supposed to be 10, and 4 plus 6 divided by 2 is supposed to be 5, which means something is wrong. Okay, good. So let's quickly check. Let's print their result and see what type of result is going to give us before we perform the average. So 6. So the output is 10. Then let's now check it again. Let's try again and check the results now. So R2 number, R2 value divided by what 2. So let's check it out. Oh, sorry. So you see that our program is now correct. It now gives us a good result. I can see that the reason why it's giving us a bad result is because there is a mistake in this variable, or because we don't use brackets in it. So the first thing that it is doing is this. Instead of it to do the calculations separately, the first thing that it is doing is it is dividing the second variable by 2. You know our first variable is 4, and it will divide this second variable by 2. Our second variable is 6, so it divided by 2, it's going to be 3, and it is adding them together. That is the reason why we are having problem. If I want to show you something, if I put it inside a bracket, so it's going to do the division of this both together, instead of dividing it 2 by the second values alone. Instead of the, it's going to do the both. So now let's check it if it is going to work perfect. So 4 and 6. So as you can see, it worked perfectly fine. Now it is perfectly okay since we already changed the variable. So this is how we accept input from our user, and I'm going to show you how to accept input to do the simple interest also. So after this, I'm going to stop this tutorial here, and I'm going to give you an assignment. In the next video, we are going to move to string in Python. So let's comment this out. So we are trying to write a program that's going to accept input from our user and find its simple interest. So in order to do that, we have to follow the first steps that we use to solve our simple interest. But in this case, we are going to be accepting user from our we are going to be accepting input from our user using the input function. So let's start with principal. Principal is going to be int. Instead of typecasting the result after we have done with this, we just want to make our code much more shorter. So we want to typecast it straight. As our user is inputting the text, we just want to typecast it to an integer, or we can typecast it to float, since we are dealing with float and we can have float in our result. So let's just say float, then followed by input. This is my first declarations. If you notice, it is quite the same thing as this. I first declare my first variable by using input, and I save its result inside this, and later I typecast it by putting first number inside an integer. So instead of us to be going through that stress, then we can just typecast it straight like this. So let's accept rate from user also. So we can now do the calculations of what we accept from our user. So let's just say so in this case, let's print the simple interest and check if our calculation is correct and if it's going to work perfectly. So the very first thing that we did is we accept input from user and convert it to a float and save it inside our variable called principal. The next thing we do the same, the next thing we do the same, and we now do the calculation by following the simple interest formula, which is principal times rate times time divided by 100. So in our previous listing, there is a mistake. It's supposed to be it's supposed to have a bracket inside it so that our code is going to know that we want to divide it by everything, not by time only. So let's check it out. Let's check the result that it's going to provide to us. So enter principal. Let's say principal is 10, rate is 5, and we have time to be 20. Then the simple interest is equals to 10. Are you with me? We can rerun the code and supply new input by typing this. And as you can see, our result is somehow different from before. And if you run it again, you can have our principal to be 200, the rate to be 10, and the time to be 30. And here it is. You see that it is somehow different also. So that is just it about simple how to accept input from users. So I'm going to stop this tutorial here, and we are going to continue in the next sections. In our next sections, we move to string. I'm going to give you an assignment so that you can also practice on it. I've already given you one assignment up there, which is this: to write a program to solve for quadratic equation. So the next program that I'm going to give you, the next assignment. So I would like it if you try this assignment and give me a feedback on it. If you have a problem while doing the assignment, you can always tell me about it so that I can update you about it. I can explain it to you. So thanks for watching. Thank you. I hope you really understand my tutorial. Thank you very much.